Yes, we're back. What's happening, Pod Gang? My name is Emil Walker, and you are listening to Inside the Ride, a podcast that dives deep into conversations with fascinating people about the highs and lows of the journey towards purpose. My guest today is Lou Rainbow, a ceramicist and maker who is leading the craft revolution from Dartington in Devon, and is also at the forefront of getting people to reconnect with the world through making stuff with their hands and getting into nature. Here is a bit of copy from their website to give you some more context. In 1925, the Dartington experiment set out to explore new ideas and projects with the aim of building a better society. The estate became famous as a multicultural centre, a testbed of innovation and a campus for practical and progressive learning. The experiment attracted some of the greatest thinkers, creatives and changemakers of the 20th century, and their work and many-minded philosophy had a profound influence on the UK and beyond. Today we are creating a new Dartington project for the 21st century that is just as ambitious. Crafting and making is an exercise I think we could probably all do with a bit more of in our lives. There's definitely a lot of benefits that come with creating a product from scratch with your bare hands, both physically and mentally. I also think being more in touch with the natural world is a huge positive that comes from the work that Lou is doing.
Simple things like I did a series of posters last year, and one of them was like make your own tool, one said go for a walk, one said look out of the window. They were like small things that we could do, but you just don't do. You don't look out of a window anymore.
It was a very insightful conversation. If you're interested in making stuff, drawing stuff, or even growing stuff, this will probably be for you. So please make some noise for Lou Rainbow. Thank you so much for getting on the podcast, Lou. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm celebrating Easter by this weekend, looking at the roots of Easter, which are the actual word Eastra.
Eastra?
From the goddess Eastra.
So they swap the R and the E around the other way.
Yeah.
Ah.
It's pagan
Lost
roots.
in translation.
And it was snaffled by the Christians, and they changed it to Easter.
Easter, the West Country Christians.
Yes, the pronunciation of the West Country. And they said, well, what's egg shape? Oh, Jesus' tomb door, and it's made of chocolate. So that's how that came about.
Wow, what an interesting fact for all the listeners.
I know.
Thanks for sharing that.
But it's a celebration of new life. Estrogen is... That does sound like a really weird introduction to this podcast. But I have been blowing eggs all week, so tell me about it. One thing I wanted to say actually is, my introduction said Lou Rainbow. I have just been posting some pictures that I found recently of my great-grandfather, who was Sid Rainbow, and he's 100% Romany.
100%?
Yeah.
I was actually going to ask you if we could talk about your name, because Rainbow is one of those names that people might think are a self-proclaimed name, but it's actually a real surname. Yes,
and of course, moving to Totnes 8 years ago, everybody says, "Oh, did you make it up?" Yeah, my name's Flip Flop or Hedgerow.
Freddie Flip Flop.
Yeah, I just think no, it's a real name actually, and people just say, "Yeah, whatever." But yes, it is. It's a Romany name. It's a gypsy name from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And apparently it comes from when people used to be named after the things that their parents or families did, like thatching, if you were a thatcher, baker. And apparently rainbow people were people who wore their clothes dyed with berries and things, so they literally looked like...
Tie-dye berries.
Yeah, tie-dye berries. And they went around to they were known for like storytelling and doing hey nonny nonny kind of thing. So it does fit, really. And if you meet my father, he's just exactly what we've just described. He's kind of a bit of a storyteller.
Does he live in a caravan?
No, but he does wear Hessian dyed with rowan berries. No, he doesn't.
Have you seen that little gypsy caravan that's on the way out just past your house towards Totnes? Looks amazing.
I know.
I'd love to live in a caravan like that, but it's like bang next to the main road.
Yes, it is bang next to it. And you probably 2 weeks in there and you'll be craving hot shower and
Netflix.
Yes, Netflix. Yes.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about your work with the craft revolution.
Yeah.
Crafts and hand making and artisan and sourdough and all this stuff is so popular these days. And I read a quote actually whilst doing a little bit of research that says, "Have nothing in your house that you don't know to be useful or believe to be beautiful," by William Morris. How come you put that on your website? I love it.
Well, it's on everybody's coaster these days, in everybody's house, beer coasters. But it's one of those famous quotes that William Morris said. But it's actually interesting because if you look at the work of John Ruskin, which is a bit more real, not saying that Morris wasn't real, but William Morris, he kind of produced work, high-end work of craft. It's just amazing, like wallpapers, home kind of furnishings. But nobody like you and me couldn't afford them. So they weren't kind of for us. It was very much made for...
elitist.
Yeah. And I'm much more interested in, as the craft revolution, in the socialist side of making. So the kind of thing where I think that for me, making is democracy. It's like, it's like drawing. Anybody can draw. Anybody has that. If you've got, I think it's a craft for me is an essential part of being human. It's making something is an essential part of being human. And I think it's the engagement of mind, eye, and kind of your own spirit, kind of that connects, that is a very spiritual experience. And I think that you say that it's very fashionable, and it's always been there, but it's like most things in life, it goes through its own evolutions. Like, for instance, I heard recently, this was a really good quote. I think it was actually from John Lewis, which said, "You can tell when the economy is on its knees when people start buying sewing machines." And it's a really interesting kind of, but if you look at the pattern over the last maybe 50 years, you can see those kind of moments like the good life, and when the kind of economy goes flat and people just start going, oh my goodness me, people start looking to make again in a way that's connecting, it's reassuring, it's comforting to make bread, it's really actually cool to repair some of your own clothes and actually go, wow, I repaired that. And I think they're small gestures which often lead to really much bigger gestures. Like, I've been running for these carpentry courses for women for 4 years, and women are they're so fully booked, but also women want to change their reason, their kind of vocation for working. And I think it started a lot of people on a different journey just by doing 1 8-week course. And I kind of think maybe there's a need for that. I mean, I could spend hours talking to you about that whole idea because I hear it all the time. People just say, I feel nourished by what I've done. Or if I could bottle the faces that come out of workshops, they're so happy, but in a way that's their own happiness. It's not like, you go to a comedy club and you laugh and you come out going, that was brilliant. The one with the kid who's got the massive head, it was really funny.
What comedy are you watching?
Yeah, exactly. And then you kind of, it's great because you've heard someone's craft, but when you make something yourself, it stays with you, that feeling of empowerment that is like, I did this. I drew this, I made this shoe, it's like, it's the pride that comes from that first bit of making, but actually it's the persistence and being, I think, persevering at something, because making, when you get into it, is really hard, because you fight yourself, you fight all the worst demons about yourself when you make things. I want to walk away from it, I never want to do that again, it's just really not for me. And yet if you actually go back and really apply yourself, you get like 4 billion times the brilliance, the shine off it, because you've put it in. And I don't think we don't tend to put it in so much these days. I just think we just go, nah, I don't like that Netflix. Try the next one.
It's so quick, isn't it?
It is.
Disposable.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I'm never judgy budgy, because I think if you want to do that, that's fine. But I just think I see people transformed by really enjoying making again. And
I guess it places way more value on it when you're persisting.
Yeah.
Sticking out the hardships.
And like relationships, man, they're the same, got to find something, dig deep here, and, get over the fact that your partner's a complete knob or whatever it is. I'm joking.
Do you think maybe one of the reasons that it's become so popular is because we've kind of lived through this crazy consumerist age of people just trying to gather as many belongings and bits of technology and just crap as possible, that kind of is all meaningless, really, unless it's got an extensive amount of use.
Yeah, I think there are extremes right now, because, one thing I do remember, I was in the brownies, which was like, you just said, what are the brownies? Are they chocolate? No, they're not.
Gooey chocolate.
They're not.
Delicious desserts.
They haven't got hash in them either. No, that's not what we're talking about either. But the brownies had certain things. I learnt a couple of things. I was always told off. I was a bit of a wild child, even in those days. And at 5 and 6 years old, we were taught about kindness. That was really important. And looking after things, caring. So that was like polishing your shoes, washing your bike was one thing that I really liked, because not only did you wash your bike every week, but when you washed it, you thought, oh my God, that chain's really knackered, or your seat's a bit weird, or your brakes are odd. So by looking at something carefully, you understood that it needed repairing, or just caring for it. So caring on a bigger thing. But one of the things was a bit weird in my brown is we had to go and look after an elderly person in the village for a day. And I remember going to see a widow. This
How
guy,
old were you?
About 7 actually at the time, and I remember going to this guy's house and ironing his like Y fronts and making him scrambled eggs, and thinking, even then I thought, this is a little bit
odd.
A little bit me too, I think. I'm not sure what's going on, but no, it was about caring massively. And but I think that's really stayed with me, because I think you with making, I'm a ceramicist, and I like
Is that how you say it? Ceramicist.
Yeah.
Huh. I'd never thought about that before. I like it.
Cool.
Ceramics.
Yes, ceramicist. So I make large. They're all around the room at the moment, because people want to buy them, and it bothers me. But it's like selling my pet. I don't like
selling your children.
Yes, yeah. Have the one with the big head. But no, I'm really into the whole thing of making something from like earth, and then it goes through different processes, and sometimes it goes wrong, and sometimes it goes a bit weird in the firing. And I just think it's for me, it's like a little tiny bit of a universe that I have no control over, and that's really, because as an artist, you tend to be control freaks a bit, and ceramicists tend to kind of you just have to go.
It's out of my hands.
Yeah,
quite literally.
Literally, I have my hands and in the kiln. So I have my own stuff that I practice. I also draw, and I do textiles, and I like the the challenge of things, it's very private for me, and I don't often talk about it because it's like it's my introverted self as a huge extrovert. It's my tiny corner of, it's my thing.
Personal time.
Totally. And I feel very uncomfortable talking about it, actually, so that's interesting.
Should we talk about your extrovertness instead?
Yeah. Well, that is the fact that I really like to nourish people in a way that I like to say, come and do this thing, you'll be amazing. I'm constantly organising events and things like that, but I actually feel that like there's a ceramic god, I suppose, Bernard Leach, who used to say the best thing you can do if you learn something really well, like potting or whatever it is, making a pot, throwing a pot, is to teach somebody. So you kind of give them the thing that you've got. So if you learn how to make bread, then what a skill it would be to give somebody else that amazing skill. So you learn to teach in a really simple way. So I'm kind of interested in that. I'm interested in enabling other people. So that's where the craft revolution has come from, really. It's about the wanting to kind of give people the affordable courses in various subjects, but exploring things like, the smallest thing we do is like we make a blade for a knife, a tool that you'll use forever. So you make your own tool to start with. That's quite a cool thing to do.
Is it actually like proper blacksmith stuff? Wow.
Mm-hmm. And then we've also built a tiny house. So it's like pretty much
is it
like
as tiny as the knife?
No, it's a little bit bigger than that. But it's like a shepherd's hut, but it's very modern. And I work with, like, we've just done another project recently with 70 students from Plymouth University, which they're architecture students. It was amazing because they're used to just being in front of the computer the whole time. They had a week with us and we had so much fun. They made this beautiful structure that's gone up in the campsite called the Big Tent. It's made out of wood. It's made in different component parts. And some of them never touched a tool ever, like a saw, or, hadn't really understood that a line that they can draw actually can be translated into a piece of, architecture. So I think when you see their faces when they have this whole week of just exploring that world, and we often did check-ins with them. Like I said, how are you? Are you tired? Do you need some food? And they were like, God, we never do check-ins at university. Nobody asks us any questions like this. And
pay all this money and you don't even get a check-in.
No, I know. I said, they're your basic. I said, I just want to see what your face looks like, what your eyes are doing. Are you here with us? What do you need? And they just said, God, and that's a brownie thing. Going back to the brownies where you say, is everything okay? Are you okay? How does it feel? Are you happy in your learning? What do you need? And I think I come from a very brilliant education. My A-level art teacher was amazing. My tutors at college were fantastic. I was very lucky, I think, really, to be honest. I mean, it was a time where you got to just explore the world and do just about. I met up with some of my art colleagues the other day in London, and we had different stories to say, but I often think, for me, I was just given a box of magic paints to play with, and we just had 3 years of really good fun, which ended up, even though I did fine art, I ended up doing stand-up afterwards, which was really interesting for 18 months. It was just bonkers.
That's quite a segue from fine art to stand-up.
It is, and I think I was doing it because I wanted to make sense of, like, love and relationships and sex and friendships and the world and your place in the world as a woman. And my stand-up tour was called Not Very Ladylike, and it particularly wasn't not very ladylike. It was, not one to bring your parents to, but I used to talk about Proust, Barbara Cartland, obviously, all these kind of characters that were, as a woman, you kind of hear about how you should be in the world, the kind of what your expectations are. And I think that, I really wanted to say something. So I did this, and it was brilliant. And I was offered this opportunity to do something at the end of it, and I just didn't do it. I didn't want to go down that road. I thought it was a bit I think
to take the stage stuff further.
Yeah. And I think I really realised that maybe that wasn't
the right decision.
Yeah.
But it sounded like at the time it was a good thing to be doing, no?
Yeah, it was. It was really funny because I think, God, that was like, over 20 years ago, and I think I really got a lot of confidence out of it, and I think, I've done stuff that's really kind of challenged me since, like, I've worked in high security prisons, working with inmates who, and I thought nothing's as scary as stand-up. So,
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really talk to more than about 5 people at a time without feeling like everyone's judging every single word that I say. But that's just me.
That's really interesting because I kind of would have said that about you, actually, because you're an introvert with an extrovert rising.
I don't know what that means.
Nor do I, but it sounded like Totnessian. So, do you have a kind? I think you've got. I've known you for 20 odd years. I know that you have a sense of really wanting to be out in the world, but you're finding your way to do it, and it's kind of through this, and it's not through a massive gesture or doing a whole thing on stage or doing a. Wow.
I mean, the ego inside of me loves the idea of doing that, but the reality of it is it's like I get up there and I can imagine my mouth folding inside out and no words coming out.
That's called a mouth panic attack.
Is it? Yeah. Oh, there's actually a term for it. Yeah,
it's not. The folding mouth is. People say to me, "I just don't know how you could, even think about doing that." I think one of the funniest ones I used to get, because I wore like leather shorts. I was like, I was 23 years old, for Christ's sake. I had leather shorts on, and and I used to get wolf whistled as I went on. Or the guys that I was performing with would go, "Get her on first. It's a rough crowd. Get her on there."
That's nice of them.
It's not really pushing me out.
Good support.
And then I'd get out, and there'd be this massive like wolf whistle, and I'd just go, "No, Dad, not now." At the interval,
Do you think doing that at a young age has been extremely important for everything else you've done that's been scary then? Because you can look back and be like, it's never going to be that bad.
No, without a doubt. And I don't ever feel like, I don't know, I wouldn't say never, but it's really interesting because it gets rid of all that kind of thing about, the one thing you've got to be sure about is your content. I always knew exactly my set. Unlike us talking now, it's like a bit random. It's all over the place. But the thing is, when you're doing stand-up, you have to know your set. And if you don't, somebody will sniff a rat, and it just falls to pieces, and you haven't got your confidence about what your subject is. I mean, I can talk about. I mean, I talk about the work we're doing with craftivism at the moment. We're working with Sarah Corbett and craftivism this year about using craft as a way to, as activism. So a gentle protest about something, like kind of write to your MP, but do it on an embroidered handkerchief, and get their attention in a way that's very gentle, but actually really powerful, because you create conversation and you create a relationship, rather than banging a drum in someone's ear and thinking, why aren't they listening to me? And so
how do you get the hanky to them, though?
You post it.
Yeah. Do you blow your nose on it first?
That's not the point. It's a gentle thing. It's not dirty protest. But then, so craftivism, we're doing this really big, really lovely project in September about kind of what does your dare to dream about, your utopia, about what your reality is. But it's actually, we're trying to create a manifesto at the end of the weekend. So it's not just like, yeah, wouldn't it be great if we had like, lemonade coming out of the taps or something, and it's like, that's not going to happen. But this is about creating a manifesto like we used to do, which was 5 things we really are going to do. And we're starting with this first one. I think I'm very much around action. I can't bear the kind of endless talking about stuff, although I'm very good at it. I just think I'm really itching to get on with things. I just feel like God, why aren't we just getting on with this? Why aren't we doing this? I'm also doing some work around this woman's work who's just brilliant in 1960s called Sister Mary Carita. She was a nun in Los Angeles at a school, and she transformed the art world. She said, let's see the world differently. So she did a lot of protests around Vietnam War and just generally about kind of peace, bringing peace, but using art. So she would do beautiful protests, like she'd stack a load of cardboard boxes up, and then you'd paint the slogan on it, like whether it was stop the war or whatever it is, and then each nun would take a box, go home with it, and then the next day they'd go separately to the city square and then build the boxes up. So you'd leave this kind of statement, but it wasn't angry or aggressive. And it was also, if I was caught with the cardboard box, it just had a corner of an E on it, But I just loved that her thoughts were, she was as being, her rules about art and seeing things have just really changed the way I see things, because she's just simple and clear. And so we're doing a piece of work about that kind of action in July for a weekend as well. So we do lots of weekend kind of workshops. They're, hopefully affordable for people, but they are about action. They're about making a statement. And craft is one of those amazing things that you've got an easy route in, but then you can do powerful things with it. It's kind of, it's totally empowering. I think that's what I found about it. It makes you just feel very differently about yourself.
It's also like, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Which, when I was younger, I felt like it would be really cool to be a DJ or something like that. But now it's like really cool to be an organic herb farmer.
I think, it's like that thing, you're just too young to know about the Good Life program.
Yeah, it sounds good.
So it was a really kind of, it was repeated on BBC Two for years. It was this kind of couple who decided that he wasn't going to work in the city anymore, and they lived in suburbia, and they basically, he said, I'm going to just plough my back garden up. And, the influence of that programme, there was like maybe, I think it was like 3 series on BBC Two or something. It's massive, because it's kind of, they did everything. They did the rearing chickens. She did some weaving. She made these hideous clothes for them that were dyed bright green from it was all the things you go, oh no, that's not good. And her bread was like a mountain, and it was solid, and they made parsnip wine that was just lethal. But it inspired a lot of people. I mean, where we live here right now in Devon, next door, their back garden is ploughed up. They plant everything in it. It's fantastic. It's like, but I think the kind of, it's really cool thing is that there are 2 sides to it. It's like I was saying, there were extremes, which are, people are kind of saying, well, I just want to eat gluten-free, wheat-free, everything free, but it tends to be like, sometimes at the expense of things like avocados being flown in from Ecuador.
Yeah, and I heard that they use like more water to grow avocados than to grow burgers or something. And
you think, well, actually, if we were in Devon and we were really honest about our winter kind of crops, we're talking about leeks, potatoes, cabbages, carrots, and then you wait for spring so you can have asparagus, like new potatoes, or salad crops. But it's the seasonal thing is really hard. But I think sometimes you've got to find that balance. But it is, the trend of it is the thing that makes it kind of tricksy sometimes, because I just think I'm doing some courses on basic learning to sew. They're selling out really quickly because people are just realizing that they just don't want to buy clothes that are, they don't know where they're from, how they're made. Fast fashion is like big news. And so the kind of idea that you can make your own clothes from fabrics that you've already got, and I think it's actually starting to, I suppose, it's not just catch on, but people are realising that we can't carry on doing what we're doing, especially now that, Extinction Rebellion this weekend. It's amazing. It really makes you wise up to just, what you're doing, how many things you're buying. We're all guilty of it because we've just been, it's like a process we go through I think it's difficult. I think people find it really hard to stop doing things that they feel like is their right. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's about kind of inspiring them that there are these other options rather than guilting them into.
Yeah.
It's like you can show sweatshops and you can like demonize that part of it, or you can show people that you can make their own stuff and learn to sew and do crafts. And I feel like that a lot of the negatives have been in the press for years, but now the craft stuff is happening. I feel like people are cottoning onto that much easier, getting on board with it much easier.
I think so. I mean, it's really interesting because like I said about it being fashionable, some things you can see kind of like, a peaking, and then it's like, you've got different trends that are coming up. But I think generally the way that, I think for me this weekend, I just listened and watched a lot of the Extinction Rebellion things and felt like we all need to sit down and just go, hang on a minute, about just the insects. We had friends here for Easter lunch and we painted eggs with insects that are really, in 10 years' time could be extinct here. And they're like the small peacock butterfly, it's like saying, oh, some of your friends are going to be extinct in about 10 years' time, as in they're just going to die out because of the environment that we're in, the way that, and I think it's a massive emergency, and it comes down to all the things that we do, I think, and all the things we've, are just need to wake up to. And it made us, we had a really good discussion. I had a beekeeper friend and a friend who works in horticulture yesterday. They were here for lunch and we had this really interesting discussion about all of this. How do you set your course differently? How do you stop flying? How do you, stop buying that book from Amazon? Because we're all free spirits, so we can do what we like, but actually there needs to be some new rules, that are around, like the brownies again, about caring, about kindness.
Beekeeping looks really fun.
Yeah.
And it's become really like, even though the bees are in huge decline, I feel like beekeeping is on the rise.
Thank goodness, yeah. My friend Emily is a young beekeeper. She does a fabulous course with us called Balanced Beekeeping, and it's based around the bee, and it's not based around, which it used to be. A lot of it was based around how much honey you could get out of the hive, and this is the opposite. It's like
how many bees can you get out of that?
Yes, yeah. So she starts her class, which is like 6-week class, and the first one is just, the room is just filled with the sound of the hive played very loudly, so people get with the bee, and you kind of get with its sound and the kind of rhythm of it, and you understand it. And it's like anything. It's like making, when you really, really get, if you start weaving something, it takes no time at all to get with the spirit of the material that you're weaving. Somebody's spun that, their energy's in the yarn, and then you start weaving it, so you're putting your energy into that as well. So all of a sudden this spirit of different people are into it, and you start caring about it. And it's the same with the bee course. If you really start imagining yourself as a bee and all the things that are going to attack you, and all the things that are going to threaten you, you start really caring about something. It's like it's very gentle learning, it's very, and I think craft is about that. Craft is about really, like, understanding where your clay comes from if you're making a pot, and where that clay has, like, where's it come out of, Instead of just grabbing a bag of clay, you think about how many billions of years that clay's been in the ground, and you're making a pot with it. It's
you're
it's
eating your cornflakes out of that pot.
Exactly. It's an honor, and it's that connect that is the thing that makes it really like. I was saying to somebody the other day, it's almost like a religion when you get into craft, because it's like you're totally with
Zone
it, and then
into it.
and then you start saying to your friends, "You need to do it.
You need to craft.
You need to make a pot. You really, and it's like, yeah, all right." But but I think one of the differences is that it's like I was saying I was doing this piece last summer called "Stuck Between a Rock and a Hard Drive," and it was about we're on social media all the time. So when I'm not making, I'm on my iPad, and I think, God, I need to just close the iPad. It's just like, because 2 hours can go by and I haven't made anything. I've just been in somewhere that's just seems to be pointless. Is it?
A vortex.
Yeah, because
Instagram.
I'm not sure that I'm getting anything out of it.
But it is helping promote the things that you're making, no?
Yes, yeah. But then how come they've been promoted for years and years and years without that? Not my things, but like, people like, Lisa Hammond's work, who I really love. She's founded, one of the founders of Clay College in Stoke. I bought her work 20 years ago. I thought she was amazing then. It wasn't an iPhone or an iPad around,
But do you think a big part of why it's become so popular in the last decade is because of media, social media?
Possibly, but the irony is there, because social media is the thing.
The opposite.
So it's like
the unmaking.
Yeah, the unmaking is shouting over this corner, going, "Play with me, look at me.
I'm more interesting and shiny.
I'm shiny. I'm gorgeous. Look at me." And then you've got this. No, I'd rather just take a film of myself throwing this pot, and then post it. But no, I mean, I don't know. I find that the two things are weird, because they are definitely related. But I just think making in itself is when you are deeply connected. It's like meditation. It's like meditation without. I'm not a very good meditator. I'm always thinking, what am I going to do with those roasted vegetables that are in the fridge? That's what I do when I meditate. I don't have this.
Why don't you eat the veg first and then meditate?
Because my meditation is making a pot or a bowl. Yeah. That is my time out, or, it's drawing or whatever I'm doing. I don't feel that I'm too much of a dolphin extrovert to meditate, because it just, I think that simple things like, I did a series of posters last year, and one of them was like, make your own tool. One said, go for a walk. One said, look out of the window. They were like small things that we could do, but you just don't do. You don't look out of a window anymore, because you just think, oh God, I wonder, is that, that's my iPhone pinging. Who can that be? Oh, I've got a buzz in my pocket. What was that? And
have you tried putting your iPhone or iPad into black and white? You can put it into grayscale and it becomes really boring, and you just don't want to use it.
Wow.
It's really interesting.
I think I've done that with a couple of my friends, actually.
It became so annoying for me that I had to put it back into colour, because you'll answer an email or a text message and you almost feel like repulsed looking at it, because it's just like painful on the eyes, and you put it down, and then you kind of want to stop answering emails and stop answering text messages, and I kind of need to do that, so I had to put it back into colour. You should try it. Do it for a couple of days.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. The thing is, I'm not.
It makes you realise how shiny and attractive they make everything look.
Yeah, who are they?
The eye people. But
who are they? Because I think we have this notion that, I think one of the things that when you get the train anywhere or whatever, you just see the whole world just staring at their phones, or, it's like an alien has landed and just basically connected everybody up to this thing that everybody's getting Matrix. Run over. Yeah, and it's almost like they're all distracted. What are it's like this. It's massive, and it's happened within like 20 years, 15 years, really. that we're just completely distracted by something.
I know it's bad when you have to set a reminder for yourself to look out of the window.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Or like, I went for a walk the other day with Zen and my dog, and I just thought, I knew that basically on the walk, it sounds a bit pretentious, but it just occurred to me that I needed to put some blue into the piece that I was working in, because it was like, it's blue, because I'd walked for like 2 hours, and I don't take my phone or anything with me, and I just had this simple kind of connection of, it's that. I've just realised it is that, and it's a really simple thing, but it's really significant when you get home and you've suddenly realised something that you've walked out. You've walked it out of yourself. But I do think you're right, because sometimes you do have to say, let's go for a walk. It's it's not an act of choice. Sometimes it's almost like, must do that. Whereas I think what you're saying about why is craft so in right now, why is making so important, is because we're just really, really, really trying to do the opposite of this thing that is not any of those things. It's almost like my sister and I have this thing about we might make some bread, and while it's rising, she'll chop some wood. That's the kind of, it's like I'm always in the space in between where you're still creating or making, while that's drying, I'll make that, or while, which is a really brilliant place to be. But I think it's becoming almost extinct. And so this is why people are really, grasping at,
looking for it.
Yeah, and I think I'm finding that older people, so like over 65s, are coming really wanting craft badly, because it was their whole upbringing, that whole thing of, I get a lot of older guys wanting to make knives, furniture, chairs, everything, because it was almost like a symbol of, and I'm not talking about retirement, I'm talking about kind of a boomers thing, where, and then I'm at the other end of the spectrum, I'm seeing mostly, 20, 22, 23-year-olds who are just like, I've never made anything, I don't know how to do this, I've never sewn anything, I've never, and it's almost...
Well, since, for me, moving away from Devon, like, nearly 10 years ago, I haven't had, like, any of that stuff presented to me to make it. Like,
Wow.
it doesn't kind of come across my daily path at all.
And what about in LA, though? You must have that whole... Because there's a niche thing in LA.
There is, like, it's a bit like in San Francisco where Arnell lives, like, she's been doing those courses, but it still doesn't feel like it's there for people to kind of run into. You have to be searching for it.
I mean, gosh, it's really fashionable. I do think as well, there's a lot of BBC programmes about it. There's lots of making on telly. People have just kind of, it's a zeitgeisty thing. But I'm really hopeful that the thing that I think, these things come and go in fashion, but some of the stuff we're doing, like the drift and draw stuff, drift records, where we just draw for 2 hours, different tracks, play vinyl records, and people have loved it because it's so...
What do they draw?
Well, I do a lot of kind of imagination stuff. So we start by drawing like 9 squares on a piece of paper, and then you feel like we play a track of, maybe it's Prince. We played The Fall the other day. It was really good, and we just said, just draw some portraits that like Mona Lisa, and it just warms people up because it's funny. But what we're getting people to do is use their heads rather than draw something in front of them, so they've got a kind of, so they don't have so it's not too scary. Basically, it's more it's fun, and then we get on to kind of looking at each other and looking at each other's faces, and it was a lot of laughs, lots of fun. But people just said, God, I just haven't drawn for so long. And I think that if you get that enjoyment from something that you've created, no one can take that away. But you just need to keep on with it. You need to practice it if you want it. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities to enjoy the world because you're not seeing it through creative eyes. Do you know what I mean? I think once people are opened up to that different way of seeing, things do change, and it's very hopeful as well, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like all of these projects are a very positive thing.
Yeah.
You were mentioning earlier before we started recording how, because you moved down to Devon from, was it Leicester?
Yeah.
From the big city.
Yeah.
And you've kind of set up all these things. There wasn't really too much of this stuff going on down here. What's it been like kind of having to create the vibe?
Well, I think it's that thing. I imagine, because I've worked, in Manchester and London and worked in Nottingham and was doing some interesting projects. I worked a lot with people at risk. So I did about a 2-year project at a women's refuge, working around how do you change your interior of your house or your flat, if you're given a flat, when you move out of the refuge on a shoestring. So it was a bit like kind of, they were really taxing projects, and the enjoyment from women who I thought maybe, would have other things on their mind, actually loved it. Every week we did a couple of places, and I think it was probably that beautiful distraction that creativity brings, made me realise lots of things. And I think when I came here, I thought there would be, lots of creative projects kind of happening, and I wasn't disappointed. I just thought, gosh, I thought Dartington, particularly at the time, was going to be
potential.
Was that, and I realised that maybe that's what I was supposed to do: bring some kind of creative bring something to the party instead of saying, where is it? And I think that's my advice. If if people think, God, how do you move to the country if you were 30? Like if you came back here, which would be really cool, you'd have to bring your own things to the party. Yeah. But you don't just rock up and think it's going to be, amazing. Like I think that about anything. Like if I moved wherever, I'd still think I'm taking something to the party. I can't expect it to be this circus that I'm going to the whole time. And I think actually it's easier than you think to motivate yourself and get other people motivated. You have got to have a lot of energy. I've also grown quite a massive, like, tortoise shell kind of, back that basically just says, I'm just persevering with this. I'm going to keep going. And I've got so much out of being here, I have to say. I would never have done. I've done more of my own work. I've been, I draw every day. I've probably done my own kind of masters in my own way in the time that I've been here, because I've just explored all the other avenues, as well as being, putting on a program of activity that I'm really proud of. It's just having that upbeat thing. My mum was one of the biggest influences for me. She just used to say, get out there. You've just got to be positive. You've got to use your creativity. It's essential. And she always used to say, when we grew up, I just want you to be happy. And I think, gosh, that's easier said than done. But in fact, that was like the best thing you could tell a 14-year-old, She was like independent woman who, she learnt to fly a plane at 65. I'm kind of like,
what?
Yeah, I'm in awe of her, like she was.
Does she own a plane?
No, it was like a little, those little kind of thing that Magnum PI, you probably don't know who that is.
The ice cream. The private investigator ice cream.
Private investigator ice cream. But yeah, she just like had this thing that said, I've done that, so now I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I just think, God, yeah, absolutely. It's I know it's not easy for a lot of people to say that, but it's that kind of get up and go that is a crafting necessity. You've just got to keep, no one's gonna do that. Is what I'm thinking. I mean, I've always said this to you. You are it. You are one person, but have the potential to be everything you want to be. And not you have the potential to be fantastic and enormous and great. You have the potential to be everything you need to be. But I think time is now.
Time is now. So what's your next plan? What's next with the craft revolution?
Resolution is to be this year it is a little bit more political, and it's because the revolution of it is that it celebrates the circle or the wheel of kind of Dartington 1925. It was kind of craft arrived with Dorothy and Leonard Elmhurst.
1925.
Yeah.
Wow, it's nearly 100 years ago.
Yeah, I know. Amazing. And they said, let's just create this, I suppose, like a community that was based around like making truth, kind of all the things that you, I think for them, it was post First World War, so they wanted to kind of have weavers, stonemasons. They built so many buildings. And everything inside was kind of handmade, tweeds, glass, ceramics. It became ultra kind of well known. And one thing I really love about Dorothy is that she invited loads of artists, loads of makers, loads of dancers, loads of people who would change the face of Dartington, because by inviting people, like I invite Emil Walker, he comes and then he brings somebody else from San Francisco who says, I do this kind of thing. Then and all of a sudden you've got this really amazing culture back that is the thing that you were looking for, but you've created it. But she did it purely by invitation. So she invited everybody here, and it influenced the whole of the Southwest at the time that she was here, particularly her and Leonard. I mean, one of the big projects I'm doing this year is there's a really famous potter, Bernard Leach. He built his own cabin here in 1937 at Dartington, and we're restoring that cabin this year. We've got some funding, and we're just going to create a place where we're celebrating that history, but we're doing it by bringing real people here. So we're having a residency, we're having just some really funky things happening, but they're done with connections with people. And like one guy is 70, he wants to build a wood-fired kiln. He's a really famous potter. He's like, it's just lovely. It's like there's so many people come out of the woodwork, come to see me and just pop their head around the office and say, oh, can I help with this? Can I build this? I've got somebody who might want to be an artist in residence, and it's remarkable, actually. I'm blown away by how many people want to help and genuinely want to take part in something. That's all I ever want as a person who is, I've got a kind of way of bringing people together, but I don't want my name on the ship if we build a ship. Do you know what I mean? I'm not that kind of person. I want the ship just to sail and everybody be on it. And I'm not tied to it. I'm not wedded to it. I'm not, it's not something that I'm obsessed about. I just think this is such a beautiful opportunity. That's pretty much that's how I do everything. I don't want to own any of it. I just want it to exist.
Yeah, it sounds like people are really kind of jumping on board with being involved with a passionate community.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because if they get a rumbling that it's happening, I'm getting people from all over the world interested, particularly with the cabin. The potter, Marianne de Trey, she lived there for 65 years after Bernard Leach. These are two eminent potters, I just think, gosh, what a fabulous legacy, really, that it deserves, and will have life itself again. That's the whole revolution for me. It's like, it's fiery. When you work with makers and artists, there's a lot of temperaments, and it's really, it's really vibrant as a community anyway. But I think as well, the politics of it are just great. It just feels right. It feels like it's true, and I feel pretty privileged to be involved. Yeah, people are finding that that's all they need is people. And I don't mean that in a cheesy way, like people say, "Oh, wish I had community, but I hate my neighbour." It's actually the opposite. It's actually the way we've got to try and learn to work with each other. And it's still the brownies. I'm back to the brownies. It's kindness, and it's caring.
Ironing Y-fronts.
And ironing some old man's
Your neighbour's
Y-fronts.
Y-fronts.
Jesus. That's illegal, surely.
It depends where you live. Yeah, no, I feel like that kind of, that sense of community is becoming what people really are kind of craving after spending so much time on screens.
Yeah. I think one of the things that people really love is feeling like they're I think here's a really good project we do, where we start a project where you build a table. It's like from scratch, but you start by taking adults, 10 of them, into the woods at Dartington Forest, and you ask them to identify some trees. And there's people crying with embarrassment, because they just...
I don't know what a tree is.
Well, no, yeah, there's that. But then it's like, no, I don't know what an ash tree looks like.
Oh, I don't know what an ash tree looks like.
I'm ashamed for you.
I know what an oak tree looks like.
Yeah, very good.
And
what about...
It's terrible, isn't it? I grew up in Devon.
I know. And so... but it's almost like, why don't you know those species of trees? Why don't you know this is where you came from, my friend? I'm not saying that it's really, 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 really essential, because you're not a woodsman. You don't chop down trees, but I just think, gosh, why don't we know those species of butterfly that are going to be extinct? I do now, because I just painted them on some eggs. I got to know their names. And it felt really important that I knew their names. It was like, God. And now I'm thinking, tomorrow I'm taking you to the woods and you're going to learn some trees, my friend.
Oh, I'm up for that.
But it's like, it brings it home to these people who are going to build a table out of ash or whatever it is they're going to use, because you wouldn't use a sequoia tree to make a table.
Why not?
Because it's a Californian redwood, because it's really dense and
really
hard. Big. Whereas you might make a table out of ash, or you might, but you're using those properties of the tree because you understand what they are. And it's like, otherwise you might as well just go to IKEA and buy a piece of wood and start making a table out of it. It doesn't actually bring the learning of, or the understanding of that material home to you. It's I think we try and do that with every course we do. We say, what is this? Where does this start? Who's planted this seed? We did a course called Fleece to Home Furnishings. Basically, we started at a sheep farm where the sheep's wool was shorn, and then it was carded, and then we produced these really beautiful grey, like Scandinavian lampshades and cushions that were just really super cool, very minimal. But the fact is that we understood they were blue Leicester sheep or whatever they were. They had a certain quality to the wool that lent itself to do. It's just like, wow, you'd never forget that if you did that. It's like, it's a relationship. It's like the thing we were talking about. Making anything is embarking on a relationship, and it's a true blessing to do it. I think if you're really going to do it, it should be seen as like going into anything. Tinder, anything.
Commit.
Commit. Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing all of your knowledge and exciting projects.
It's a really long one. I just talk forever, don't I?
Yeah, I mean, we could keep going for another hour or two if you want.
I think we could, and we could easily go on. I know.
Maybe we can revisit it when you've
edited this down to like 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes of golden knowledge.
It's been a pleasure. We know each other really well, but we don't really often do this with microphones in my lounge, so it's very nice.
And it's really interesting to kind of hear much more about what's going on than just the small little square photos that I see on Instagram.
Yeah.
Understand the depth
Bit
behind
of
the
depth.
projects.
Yeah. Thanks. I've loved it. It's good. It's a way of framing things, isn't it?
Definitely.
I wish you very good luck with this, because you have some really interesting ideas and you are a good connector, and you've learnt what your strengths are in that, and I'm really impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, hopefully it will go somewhere. But if it doesn't, I still get to chat to cool people all the time, so
Nice.
I'm happy.
Very cool.
Cool. Well, I'll see you next time I'm in Devon.
Yeah.
I'm excited to check out
Some
more
trees.
of your work.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
trees, yeah. Some ash trees.
Some ash trees, we'll find one, yeah.
All right, let's wrap this one up.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, and see you soon.
Very good.
Enjoy your wine.
Thank you.
Yes, we have made it. It's the end of the podcast. Thanks again to Lou for getting involved. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation, and I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. If you're interested to find out more information on the work that Lou's doing with the craft revolution and everything else that's going on down in Dartington, I will post some links in the description that you can follow there. We'll be back very soon with another podcast, either this week or next week. So stay tuned and see you then.